After the long holiday weekend, it's time for the weekend box office report brought to you by our friends at AMC Theaters. Fox's X-Men Apocalypse and Disney's Alice Through the Looking Glass squared off over Memorial Day weekend, with a clear winner being crowned in X-Men Apocalypse. The latest mutant adventure topped the weekend, earning $65.3 million over the 3 days and $80 million over 4 days for an easy #1 spot. The other wide release, Alice Through the Looking Glass, took in $26.9 million over the 3-day weekend, with a total of $34.1 over the 4-day weekend for the #2 spot, a not so favorable start for a film with a $170 million production budget. Sony's The Angry Birds movie took in $18.7 million for the 3-day and $24.6 million in 4 days for the #3 spot, bringing in domestic total of $66.3 million. Captain America Civil War took the #4 spot with $15.1 million in 3 days and $19.4 million for the 4-day weekend. Universal's Neighbors 2 Sorority Rising rounded out the #5 spot, dropping a steep 58% for $99.2 million in 3-day sales and $11.4 million total for the 4-day weekend. Mark, thoughts on the holiday weekend box office results?
Well, Ashley, my thoughts are that X-Men Apocalypse, you did just fine, okay? You're not going to do Days of Future Past numbers, both, and critically, it wasn't as well received as Days of Future Past was, but I think Cinema Score had audiences enjoying X-Men Apocalypse, so maybe that does get some positive word of mouth week to week. I was concerned that there was going to be somewhat of a superhero fatigue because you had Batman v Superman in March, and then you had Civil War. So there's a lot of movies with a ton of superheroes in them, and maybe people got a little tired of that. I don't know if that had a huge effect on this box office, though. It clearly shows that there's still a whole lot of X-Men fans out there that are dying to see these movies as soon as they come out. I mean, the bigger story this week to me is the non-performance of Alice Through the Looking Glass, which I never wanted to see personally. I don't think a lot of people did. I don't think this was a sequel that people were clamoring for. I think this one and Huntsman Winter's War are going to be remembered as like maybe the two biggest bombs of 2016. But what Huntsman Winter's War didn't have to deal with is all this other stuff that is swirling in the news this weekend between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And I don't know what all the facts of the case is. Nobody really does. Maybe that stuff comes out eventually. We don't know. There was some very strong allegations against Johnny Depp that his lawyers denied very feverishly as well. That cannot help when you're trying to promote a movie, when Johnny Depp is the biggest star in the movie and the Mad Hatter is the guy that you're relying on for a lot of your marketing. So I think that's one of the many reasons why Alice Through the Looking Glass did not do as well as the studios hoped. But apparently it was tracking at like $60 million to open. Who is doing the tracking? Who does tracking anymore? Because the last couple of years, box office tracking has become a very inexact science. Like, people miss all the time whether they shoot way low or they shoot way high. That clearly was the case with Through the Looking Glass. And then obviously you can't account for all the stuff that was in the papers this weekend. So, Clark, I'll turn it over to you first. You look at this top 5, which Angry Birds coming in at a solid 3rd as well. What stands out to you the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alice is definitely the thing that's the most important topic of conversation in terms of box office. I'm wondering too, you know, the first film did so well. I mean, exceedingly well. And I wonder if it's an issue of timing. Maybe they waited too long to actually get this sequel out. Not to say that people were clamoring for it in the first place, but you know, to me, the idea is this movie the first movie makes $1 billion. This one barely cracks. It doesn't even crack 30 in its 3 days. And you know, the extended weekend obviously got it to 34. But I don't know. I think they waited too long for that. The other thing I wanted to point out is, remember, guys, when I bid $1 on X-Men Apocalypse box office weekend? I mean, I'm just saying.
Do we owe you $1?
You owe me $1.
Owe you $1?
No, now I get to go to the showdown, the showcase showdown. Basically, Christian said he thought it was going to make 80 in its 3 days, and in its
3 days.
In its 3 days.
And it took it 4 days to make 80.
Exactly.
So.
Yes. So I win.
All right, so Clark gets $1. Schnepp, I'm not paying you any money because now my pocketbook has been exhausted with those 100 cents. What stands out to you?
Yeah, the Alice film stands out. That, you know, I mean, it got okay. I mean, I was surprised at how many critics actually liked it. I couldn't stand the film.
You were not a fan.
I was not a fan. I don't have to go back into thrashing it again. But the box office did the thrashing for me. It, definitely underperformed. I don't know how much that's tied in with Depp and his real his public persona, or what's going on with any of that. All that's horrible stuff. No matter who's at fault or whatnot, that's horrible news, and that can't bode well for a family picture where husbands and wives want to go and have a good time and not have a dude being accused of things in the film that they're about to see. So I definitely think it did have some kind of effect on it. X-Men not making as much money as everyone thought it was going to make, that with a critical response to it, I don't think there's any superhero fatigue. I just simply think that people are being a little more discerning with what they're going to spend their money on, whether or not it's going to be this or that. I mean, I think people decided not to spend money on Alice in Through the Looking Glass. That's not a superhero film. Remember, we had Deadpool. That was an X-Men film. That made insane amounts of money, and that was in February. Then you had Batman v Superman. Then you had Civil War. X-Men is a totally different kind of superhero film anyway. It gets a different group of the nerd cluster, if you want to say. So it's a different kind of film that's in the superhero genre anyway. It's as different as Kick-Ass is from Civil War. So I just think with the reviews, and it's not such a strong ending for X-Men, that us hearing that Bryan Singer is like, hey, I might take a break for the next film, is a good idea. I think he wants to do 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He's got a lot of other films he wants to work on. But that's what I think about the box office. I'm glad to see Civil War sticking in there at 15.
Yeah.
So
I mean, do we think that the marketing for X-Men Apocalypse could have been done better? Because I don't think that they're thrilled with this number, over at the studio, over at Fox, because like you said, Deadpool did so well, but that had like the greatest marketing campaign of all time, and it came out in the middle of February,
right,
which is not necessarily a hot spot for films, so that was pretty much your option when you went to the movies in that entire month. X-Men, every week there's going to be competition. Now it's got Turtles looking right down,
right,
and you have Popstar and You Before Me, or Me Before You, what the hell? You can forgive me for not getting that title right. But, I mean, it seems like the marketing for X-Men Apocalypse was like, yeah, it's an X-Men movie and it's coming out, but nothing really stood out, you know?
And I wonder, too, obviously the X-Men franchise is sort of transitioning over their heroes, right? So they're introducing these new, younger crop of actors who are playing these characters. And then they're sort of, I mean, obviously, for instance, Hugh Jackman, we know Wolverine is going to be his last time he's playing Wolverine. So they're like phasing out these actors that audiences have gotten to know over the last 10 years of this franchise. And so speaking to the marketing, I wonder if maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe not being able to recognize Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, and Hugh Jackman in their X-Men garb in the marketing. Maybe that had an effect.
Well, definitely. I mean, First Class made a chunk of money. That only had Hugh Jackman flipping him off, in one scene. It was like, but I think, I would like to see them take that new cast of characters that they introduced in X-Men Apocalypse and not wait 4 years until they're old. I mean, like, just get another one in, shooting now with the brand new Jean Grey and Cyclops and Nightcrawler. I like that new cast, and I'd love to see another X-Men film with just them in it. So, I mean, that would be great. I just don't want to wait 5 years until they figure out what they're doing, because it's like they're all going to be 5 years older. They should just rock that out right now.
I kind of buy into Schnepp's idea. Just everybody who's in the new cast who still wants to be in an X-Men movie, come back and shoot another one. And if you clearly don't want to be in X-Men movies anymore, then we just don't need you. You never have to wear that blue costume again. Don't worry about it.
Who could Mark be talking about, I wonder?
I'm just saying, hypothetically, if you were a person that didn't feel like coming back to X-Men. By the way, quick side note, The Jungle Book did $7 million this weekend, and that's a movie that came out in the middle of April.
That's crazy.
Well done.